Although he hadn't taken advantage of the situation last night, the memory of carrying her to bed and a few times he'd reached out to touch her made him unable to meet her eyes. What gave John Carter some solace was that at least Victoria Snow still remembered he had saved her. After a moment of hesitation, John Carter forced a serious expression. "Since you already know what happened, I have nothing more to say. After your boyfriend left, I closed your door and went back to my room. I absolutely didn't see anything. Then why was I in bed? Did the blanket fly onto me by itself?" As soon as he finished speaking, John Carter's serious facade crumbled. He stammered, "Actually, I was afraid you'd misunderstand. I admit I carried you to bed, but I absolutely had no ill intentions. After covering you with the blanket, I left. Please believe me. How can I trust you?" Victoria Snow's face darkened further. #### Chapter 13, Turning Danger into Jade. John Carter wiped away the cold sweat. Though embarrassed to bring it up, to prove his innocence, he cautiously said, "You must have checked your body when you woke up this morning, right? Because I was afraid you'd misunderstand, I didn't even dare dress you. How could I have done anything more inappropriate?" Hearing this, Victoria Snow's gloomy expression softened slightly. When she woke up, she had indeed checked herself. Although her upper body was bare, her virginity was intact. With this thought, the icy look on Victoria Snow's face gradually disappeared, replaced by a fresh wave of tears. As if afraid John Carter would see her crying, she quickly lowered her head and sobbed. John Carter didn't know how to comfort her. After a moment's thought, he said softly, "Isn't Richard Knight your boyfriend? How could he do this to you?" As soon as he finished speaking, Victoria Snow abruptly lifted her head, staring at John Carter. She said, each word distinct, "From now on, Richard Knight is no longer my boyfriend. He's not worthy, not worthy." She practically screamed the last two words. Seeing the fierceness in Victoria Snow's eyes, John Carter took a sharp breath. All right, regardless of what happened between you two, as long as you don't misunderstand me." After a moment of silence, Victoria Snow suddenly seemed to remember something and asked suspiciously, "How did you discover that Richard Knight drugged me?" John Carter stammered again, "Last night, when I was coming back from the restroom, I happened to pass by your window and saw. I also overheard what you said before you fainted. You know your window curtains haven't been installed yet, so." After speaking, John Carter added silently to himself, "Innocent peeking." He had indeed peeked. Last night, but after all, he had saved Victoria Snow's virginity. With this justification, the awkwardness on John Carter's face gradually faded, and after a while, he regained his composure. Victoria Snow said nothing more, her beautiful face clouding over with gloom. John Carter, though never having experienced passionate love, understood the heartache of betrayal, wisely choosing silence. Their silence made the small room's atmosphere heavy. It was John Carter's room, and with Victoria Snow so close, the phrase, "a man and a woman alone," popped into his head. Glancing at Victoria Snow's full breasts, John Carter recalled last night's glimpse of her bare torso, a flicker of arousal stirring within him. The air grew thick, John Carter's breath heavier, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Just as a surge of lust rose within him, Victoria Snow broke the suffocating silence. "By the way, you slept in so late, have you found a job yet?" Her words lifted the oppressive atmosphere. John Carter, relieved, nodded quickly. "No, I just moved here. I'm not from around here, came to find work, haven't found anything yet, so no need to get up early." "Oh, what kind of work are you looking for?" ### Chapter 14, Getting him a job. With the conversation started, Victoria Snow seemed to forget last night's unpleasantness, calmly chatting with John Carter, though a flicker of sadness occasionally crossed her eyes. John Carter gave a wry smile and shook his head. "I don't know what I want to do. I just graduated from university. This is the third city I've moved to, still haven't found the right fit. But right now, I'm not picky, as long as it's not something I completely dislike. Is that so? Victoria Snow slowly walked over and sat on the edge of John Carter's messy bed. It wasn't that she insisted on sitting on the bed, but in the entire room, besides the clothes-covered sofa, there wasn't another chair. But after sitting down, she wrinkled her nose and asked suspiciously, "What's that smell?" "It's awful." John Carter felt a chill. Besides the stink of the moldy socks piled on the sofa, what else could it be? Seeing John Carter speechless, Victoria Snow waved her hand dismissively. "Well, if you really can't find anything suitable, I can get you a job. Just not sure if you'll like it." "Really?" John Carter's face lit up with excitement. His excitement was understandable. He'd been in Tan Long City for over 2 weeks, without a single acquaintance. Wandering around alone, it was hard to even find someone to ask for directions. Victoria Snow's offer was a godsend. Most importantly, John Carter was practically broke. Moving between 3 cities had depleted his funds. If he didn't find work soon, he might have to consider joining the beggars' sect. What kind of work? Overwhelmed with excitement, John Carter didn't forget to inquire about the nature of the work first. If the job Victoria Snow recommended was something he found distasteful, wouldn't all this joy be for naught? Without hesitation, Victoria Snow replied, "Golden Charm Jewelry is hiring salespeople." "You can do that, right? A jewelry company?" John Carter furrowed his brow. "Yes, I work there too. The sales department is currently short 2 staff members. If you're interested, I can take you for an interview tomorrow." As a director, she couldn't pull any other strings, but getting him a small position in the company was still within her capabilities. After a moment of contemplation, John Carter nodded. "All right, then I'll trouble you to take me tomorrow." John Carter had no objections to this type of work, but hearing that Victoria Snow also worked there, he agreed somewhat inexplicably. "Don't mention it. If it weren't for you, I would have been done for last night. I should be thanking you." After conversing with John Carter for a while, Victoria Snow finally emerged from her earlier melancholy, a faint smile gradually appearing on her face. They say the deeper the love, the deeper the hurt. While it was unclear whether Victoria Snow had truly let go as she appeared to have, the fact that she could smile suggested her feelings for Richard Knight weren't that profound. "How long have you worked at Golden Charm?" John Carter asked after a pause. 2 years. John Carter asked suspiciously, "Then why did you move here? Where did you live before?" Victoria Snow blushed at John Carter's question. "I used to live at the company, but, for certain reasons, I moved out." Seeing Victoria Snow's embarrassed expression, John Carter didn't need to think to know it was definitely related to Richard Knight. From their conversation last night, he had gleaned some information. They had probably known each other for about half a year. No matter how composed Victoria Snow appeared in front of him, she must still harbor some lingering feelings for Richard Knight. "So, you're probably not going to work today?" "I was planning to take a few days off to relax, but if you're looking for a job, I'll go with you tomorrow." Chapter 15, High Salary, 1500. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, Victoria Snow left John Carter's room. John Carter had originally planned to go out job hunting today, but because of Victoria Snow's words, he stayed home, unusually tidying up his antique-filled room. Not only did he organize the messy pile of clothes on the sofa, washing what needed washing and hanging what needed hanging, he even laundered his bedsheets, restoring the original color to the long dust-covered linen. Because he went to bed early, John Carter woke up early the next morning at 6:30 to wash his face. He thought he had woken up quite early, but while he was still getting dressed, Victoria Snow, already prepared, appeared at his door. Today, Victoria Snow wore a form-fitting women's suit, which accentuated her perfect figure and curves. Below, she wore a knee-length skirt, looking incredibly alluring. However, John Carter inwardly sighed, thinking, "What a shame," because Victoria Snow's suit, while accentuating her perfect figure, included a white blouse beneath the jacket, completely concealing the spring scenery John Carter had glimpsed in the elevator yesterday. Slightly embarrassed by John Carter's gaze, a faint blush rose on Victoria Snow's cheeks. "What are you looking at? Hurry up and gather your things. We'll be late if you don't." John Carter quickly averted his gaze from Victoria Snow, forcing a laugh. Right. Let's go then." As they descended the stairs, John Carter asked, "By the way, what do you do at Golden Charm Company? Are you in sales too?" "Yes, that's right. If you get the job, we'll probably be in the same department." Not wanting to pressure him, Victoria Snow didn't reveal her true position. John Carter instinctively replied, "That's good then." Victoria Snow, a few steps ahead, turned back in surprise. "What did you say?" "Nothing. Let's hurry." Soon, John Carter and Victoria Snow finally reached their destination, the Golden Charm Jewelry Company. Golden Charm Jewelry Company occupied a large area in the bustling city center, resulting in a constant flow of customers. The jewelry ranged in style and price, categorized into N tiers, from a few hundred to tens of millions. Thanks to Victoria Snow's recommendation and his university diploma, John Carter landed the job effortlessly. John Carter now stood in the sales manager's office. Seated at the desk was a man nearing 60, Leo Strong, the sales director. The director, in his 50s, spoke amiably. "Golden Charm Company is a large, established company, so our compensation is much higher than elsewhere. During the first month of probation, the base salary is 1,500 plus commission. After the probationary period, it can go up to 2,000 base plus commission. If your performance is good, 3,000 or even 4,000 is not impossible. It all depends on your performance." A base salary of 1,500. Hearing this compensation package, John Carter's face fell, he almost turned to leave. Hashtag Chapter 16, Rage for the Fair Lady. "I'm a university graduate, and taking an entry-level job like this is already a compromise, yet the salary is only 1,500. While not arrogant, John Carter wasn't about to settle for such low compensation. If his X-ray vision wasn't so unreliable, he'd seriously consider relying on lottery scratchers for a living. The sales director chuckled. "Young man, I know you're a university graduate, but our company values results. If you're truly gold, you'll shine sooner or later. The future of Golden Charm Company rests on your shoulders." Despite being nearly 60, Director Strong delivered this statement with a perfectly straight face, showing no sign of insincerity. John Carter stifled a wave of nausea, nodding vigorously, swearing, "Thank you, Director Strong, for your trust. For Golden Charm Company, I will definitely give my all, regardless of the difficulties." Hearing John Carter's heroic words, Director Strong's cloudy eyes instantly lit up as if he had found a kindred spirit, his expression like they'd met too late, laughing heartily. "I like young people like you. Good. With your words, our Golden Charm Company will shine brightly thanks to you." John Carter politely nodded his thanks again. Seeing the two men, with such a difference in age, so like-minded, Victoria Snow, standing beside them, gaped. Since meeting John Carter yesterday, she had always thought he was timid, blushing every time he spoke to her, but his current performance completely overturned her perception. Just as John Carter rolled up his sleeves, preparing for a grand undertaking, Director Strong's next words nearly sent the enthusiastic John Carter tumbling to the ground. Director Strong chuckled, "Oh, I forgot one thing. To test the abilities of new employees, if you don't sell 3 pieces of the company's jewelry in the first month, you can honorably resign the next month." Hearing this, John Carter's excited expression immediately froze. Seeing John Carter's stiff expression, Director Strong added, "This is just the lowest standard. You should know how long a month is. Some people can market thousands of pieces of jewelry a day. You have to be confident in yourself. 3 pieces of jewelry can probably be sold out in a day. I have high expectations for you. Remember, the future of Golden Charm Company rests on you. Looking at the serious expression of Director Strong in front of him, John Carter finally woke up from his dream. Damn it, I've been played. After all this talk, I'm still just a small, insignificant employee of Golden Charm Company. If I can't market at least 3 pieces of the company's jewelry during the probationary period, it means I won't pass probation. And if I don't pass probation, there's no need to continue this job. Gritting his teeth, John Carter prepared to leave a few resounding words, something like, "There are plenty of other fish in the sea," and walk out with his head held high. But just as John Carter's words were about to come out, Victoria Snow beside him suddenly spoke first. "Thank you, Director Strong. With me guiding him, I believe he will achieve good results." With Victoria Snow having spoken, John Carter could only swallow his words. Victoria Snow had been kind enough to bring him to the interview and was now helping him like this. If he really left now, it would be too embarrassing for her. Looking at Victoria Snow's stunningly charming face, John Carter could only sigh inwardly. The ancients bristled with rage for a fair maiden. Today, I swallow my anger for a beauty. Consider this me giving you face, Victoria Snow. I'll endure. ### Chapter 17, Collision on the Road. Under Victoria Snow's guidance, John Carter quickly completed the onboarding procedures. But just as Victoria Snow was about to lead John Carter to the HR reception desk to receive his temporary certification, she was called away by someone else in the company. Before leaving, Victoria Snow gave John Carter the address of the Human Resources reception desk. Following Victoria Snow's description, John Carter quickly located the Human Resources Department, spotting from afar its exquisitely decorated reception desk, behind which stood 2 impeccably dressed, smiling beauties. Seeing these 2 beauties, John Carter immediately felt the trip was worthwhile and hurried towards the HR reception desk. Upon entering the HR department, John Carter felt a strong force slam against his chest from the side. Though unable to immediately discern what had hit him, his first sensation was softness, extreme softness, reminiscent of holding Victoria Snow last night. Experiencing that softness, John Carter realized he'd bumped into someone, or rather, someone had bumped into him. Without thinking, he prepared to push the person away, but as he reached out, his hand froze. In that instant, John Carter was stunned, his face flushing crimson. 10 out of 10 for resilience, was his only thought. The woman who had collided with him seemed equally stunned, staring at John Carter, speechless, and not immediately moving from his embrace. Only after John Carter's kind reminder did she snap out of it. Ah! With a shrill cry, the woman came to her senses, slapping John Carter's hands away and quickly jumping back, angrily shouting, "Pervert, let go of me." The woman's shout snapped John Carter out of his daze. In his fluster, he blurted out without thinking, "I'm not a pervert. I've already let go of you." Having been groped in broad daylight by a strange man, the woman's eyebrows shot up, her face flushing with anger. Disgusting. Though not entirely his fault, John Carter felt a pang of guilt, having grabbed her chest in front of the 2 HR beauties. Unfazed by her calling him a pervert, he apologized, I'm sorry. I didn't know you'd suddenly appear there." Only then did John Carter clearly see the face of the woman who had collided with him. She appeared to be around 30, still attractive, with a round, unwrinkled face that belied her age, possessing a rare childlike quality. She wore a women's suit similar to Victoria Snow's. Despite his wandering thoughts, John Carter remained aware of his location in the HR department, with the 2 HR beauties observing the scene. Just as John Carter braced himself for the woman's fury, she unexpectedly chose silence. Staring at him blankly for a moment, she then lowered her head and hurried out. Watching her flustered retreat, a large question mark formed in John Carter's mind. What's wrong with her? Why did she just run off like that? After much deliberation, John Carter attributed the girl's bizarre behavior to one thing: his undeniable charm. It must have been so potent that she couldn't bring herself to scold him. Yes, that had to be it. This thought brought a smug grin to John Carter's lips. Why hadn't he realized his charisma before? If he had, he'd probably have a girlfriend by now. #### Chapter 18, The Girl Who Couldn't Miss a Chance. While John Carter was basking in the glow of his self-perceived charm, a voice, clear as a silver bell, rang out from the reception desk of the HR department. "Excuse me, sir, can I help you?" Snapped back to reality by the melodious voice, John Carter turned to see two stunning women at the reception desk, giggling behind their hands. A blush crept up John Carter's neck. The earlier collision with the girl had obviously been witnessed by these two. Embarrassed but undeterred, John Carter strode to the desk, presented his documents, and said with a smile, "I'm a newly recruited salesman, here to collect my temporary ID." Though they'd stopped giggling, the two women still wore amused expressions as John Carter approached. One of the women took his documents, sorted through them, and finally handed him a temporary ID. Just as John Carter took the ID and turned to leave, the woman who had given it to him suddenly spoke. "Hey, John Carter, right? Do you know who you just bumped into?" John Carter shook his head. "No, why?" The woman giggled again. "That was our vice president's wife." "Oh," John Carter replied nonchalantly. He knew the vice president held a high position, but as a newcomer to Golden Charm Company, he didn't give it much thought. Seeing his indifference, the woman said cryptically, "You should seize the opportunity." Her words puzzled John Carter. He was about to ask for clarification when the other woman pulled her colleague back. "Just do your job. Be careful what you say." John Carter's confusion deepened, but since the women refused to elaborate, he simply took his ID and left the HR department. He figured Victoria Snow, having worked there for 2 years, would know everyone in the company. He'd ask her later. Still pondering the cryptic remark, John Carter arrived at the sales department. However, he didn't have a chance to showcase his talents immediately. His first task was to familiarize himself with the company and his upcoming responsibilities. Despite his lack of experience in the industry, John Carter found the work surprisingly easy. He quickly grasped the scope of his duties. It was now 10 a.m., 2 hours before lunch. John Carter had initially planned to chat with Victoria Snow to kill time, but seeing her busy with customers, he simply shook his head and wandered through the company's sales floors. Now sporting a Golden Charm Company employee badge on his chest, albeit temporary, John Carter was essentially one of them. Yet, as he walked, the employees who had been beaming at customers turned frosty the moment they saw him. This exclusion of newcomers is a chronic ailment in every company. However, there are always exceptions. Just as John Carter stepped into the elevator heading for the third-floor sales area, a somewhat familiar voice called out from beside him, "Are you the new salesperson?" John Carter glanced over. It was the same woman he'd bumped into at the HR office door. Upon seeing her, John Carter's eyes instinctively drifted towards the sacred ground he had recently grasped. Having overheard in the HR office that she was the vice president's wife, and fearing she might hold a grudge over the earlier incident, John Carter hastily offered a smile. "Yes, I presume you also work at Golden Charm Company?" #### Chapter 19, Let me introduce you to the changing room. The woman nodded, seemingly having forgotten John Carter's accidental groping. She smiled and said, "You must be unfamiliar with the company environment. Would you like me to show you around?" Earlier, glancing at the vice president's wife's chest, John Carter had noticed her employee badge. Besides a picture that strongly resembled her, the name Hannah Myers was printed below. Hearing Hannah Myers offer to show him around, John Carter grew suspicious. Could it be true, like the pretty girl in HR said, that the vice president's wife is genuinely kind? Despite his doubts, John Carter instinctively nodded. "I was worried about not having anyone to introduce me to the company's workings. It would be wonderful if you could help." Don't mention it. Follow me. I'll show you the locations of the different departments first. With that, Hannah Myers flashed John Carter a seductive smile and accompanied him into the elevator to the third floor. Upon reaching the third floor, Hannah Myers didn't stop at the sales areas. Instead, she led John Carter through a series of turns to a secluded corner. This area was devoid of not only customers but even employees. Apart from a door marked "Changing Room," nothing stood out. Despite seeing the words "Changing Room" on the door, John Carter remained puzzled as to why Hannah Myers had brought him here. Frowning, he cautiously asked, "You, bringing me here?" Before John Carter could finish, Hannah Myers turned, her voice dripping with coquettishness. "Aren't I showing you around the company?" John Carter pointed at the words "Changing Room" above, nodding solemnly. "Yes, I recognize this as the changing room." Unexpectedly, Hannah Myers twirled a strand of her hair around her finger, deliberately thrusting out her chest, creating a noticeable swell. "But you haven't been inside the changing room yet, have you?" "Huh. Should I go inside?" Just as John Carter's eyes widened, Hannah Myers winked at him, her gaze flirtatious. "I have the key to the changing room. Let me take you in for a look." Without waiting for John Carter's agreement, Hannah Myers took out the key and unlocked the changing room door. By now, Hannah Myers's intentions were crystal clear, and John Carter finally understood why the HR lady had told him to seize the opportunity. It turned out the vice president's wife wasn't being kind, she had an ulterior motive. Though surprised, John Carter, being inexperienced, couldn't resist the provocation. In an instant, an unexpected fire ignited within him. As Hannah Myers pulled him towards the changing room, John Carter blushed, pointing at the symbol on the door. This seems to be the women's changing room, right?" Hannah Myers smiled seductively. "What's there to be afraid of? It's not working hours now. I'm a man, can I really go in?" "Of course. Since we're here, it's all right to take a look. There's no one inside right now. But you're more timid than a woman. Come on in." With a startled yelp, John Carter was coaxed and pulled into the women's changing room by Hannah Myers. It wasn't that John Carter didn't want to resist, but deep down, a strange anticipation arose during his struggle, which was why he couldn't overcome a girl. Chapter 20. Salesmen must also follow unspoken rules. Upon entering the women's changing room, a strong fragrance assaulted his senses, making the already flustered John Carter shiver. He thought to himself, could this be the legendary scent of a woman? While John Carter was lost in thought, Hannah Myers turned around. "See? This is the changing room." Looking at Hannah Myers's serious expression, John Carter wiped away the cold sweat, cursing inwardly, "Do you even need to say that?" Since it was the women's changing room, John Carter felt uncomfortable and said awkwardly, I know. So, should we go somewhere else next?" Hannah Myers immediately frowned. "Why are you so nervous?" "I'm not going to eat you." John Carter didn't know what to say and could only smile sheepishly. "Hayes, this is a tough decision." "What decision?" John Carter's voice was soft, but Hannah Myers, standing inches away, still heard him. John Carter was embarrassed again, and nothing. Hannah Myers intentionally took a step forward, feigning shyness. "You're handsome. Do you think I'm pretty?" Originally just a step away from John Carter, she took another step forward, her entire body weight practically leaning against him. "Very soft." This was John Carter's only thought at the moment. Seeing John Carter stunned, Hannah Myers swayed her hips. "Say something." Hearing Hannah Myers's voice again, John Carter snapped back to reality, nodding repeatedly, and very soft. "You're so bad, saying such things in front of me." As she spoke, Hannah Myers nuzzled against John Carter. Rubbed against like this by Hannah Myers, the fire that had been suppressed in John Carter's heart for so long suddenly burst forth like a flood, unstoppable. Sensing John Carter's change, a triumphant smile appeared on Hannah Myers's lips. Do you understand the rules here yet? Rules? Wasn't it just being a lowly employee? Did he have to pay protection money too? I don't understand. What rules? Hannah Myers smiled, lifting John Carter's chin with a finger, her breath like orchids. Any handsome lad who's still unwrapped has to go through me first. Huh? John Carter was astonished. Was this a so-called promotion or some unspoken rule? How terrifying, but it seemed the current benefits weren't bad. John Carter remained silent and motionless, frozen in place as Hannah Myers's slender hands caressed his back. A difficult decision churned within John Carter. Losing my long-held treasure for 1,500 seems a bit unworthy. His thoughts and reason waged a fierce battle, but his resistance was weak, and reason was clearly losing ground. Hannah Myers, seemingly aware of the conflict in John Carter's eyes, slowly extended a hand. Handsome, shall we begin? At Hannah Myers's words, John Carter's eyes, spiraling into frenzy, regained a flicker of clarity. He hastily pushed her away, his face flushing crimson. We've seen enough here. Let's go somewhere else to continue. Despite his words, John Carter's feet remained rooted, his eyes darting restlessly. Seeing the hungry wolf-like glint in John Carter's eyes, a sly, almost imperceptible smile played on Hannah Myers's lips. She breathed, her breath like orchids. Don't be nervous. Take it slow. John Carter's breathing grew heavier, but he was clueless. Bound by, courtesy demands reciprocity, he extended his hand several times, only to retract it halfway. #### Chapter 21, Don't come closer, I don't want to commit a crime. After a moment, John Carter finally managed a cheesy line, this doesn't seem quite right. I'm not ready. Hannah Myers chuckled. Seeing her goal achieved, she dropped the pretense and began unbuttoning her blouse. John Carter swallowed hard, his eyes widening, fixated on Hannah Myers's every move. As if deliberately teasing him, Hannah Myers moved with excruciating slowness. John Carter's eyes nearly bulged before she finally unbuttoned her jacket. Freed from the constraint of clothing, Hannah Myers's cleavage seemed to swell a full cup size larger. John Carter cursed inwardly, damn it, isn't this forcing me to commit a crime? Just as John Carter, unable to resist any longer, prepared to undress Hannah Myers and bring her to justice, a knock echoed from the door, followed by a familiar voice. Who's in there? Why is the door locked? The two in the women's changing room jumped at the sound. Hannah Myers, after a brief moment of panic, quickly regained her composure and hastily gathered her discarded clothes. But John Carter was different. This was the women's changing room. If anyone saw him and Hannah Myers here engaged in this debauchery, how could he face anyone again? Most importantly, the voice outside was very familiar to John Carter. It was Victoria Snow, who had brought him here for the job interview. If Victoria Snow discovered him engaging in shady activities with a female employee on his first day, forget any hope with her, he could kiss his new job goodbye too. Panic seized him like ants on a hot pan. Just as John Carter was worrying, Hannah Myers, now fully dressed, tugged at him and whispered, "Follow me." Seeing the calmness in Hannah Myers' eyes, John Carter knew she must have a plan. Without a word, he followed her deeper into the dressing room. Moments later, Hannah Myers led John Carter to a wardrobe, unlocked it with a key, and softly said, "This is my personal wardrobe. Hide in here and don't make a sound. I'll get rid of that person and then let you out." John Carter, daring not to object, nodded repeatedly and quickly slipped into the wardrobe, not even daring to breathe loudly. As the wardrobe door closed, John Carter was plunged into darkness, with only a thin sliver of light emanating from a small gap. Despite his best efforts to suppress his anxiety, he could clearly hear his heart pounding. A moment later, a click, like a door opening, was followed by Victoria Snow's surprised voice, "Oh, Supervisor Lou, I thought it was someone else in there." As soon as Victoria Snow finished speaking, Hannah Meyer's cold voice rang out, "It seems we're not off work yet. Are you already changing clothes?" Seemingly caught red-handed, Victoria Snow hastily explained, No, I just forgot something here and came back to get it." "Is that so? Then take it and leave quickly. Don't do this again." "I understand. I absolutely won't step foot in the dressing room before work is over." After saying this, Victoria Snow slammed the door shut. Despite her respectful tone, she felt a surge of anger. Hannah Myers was just a supervisor. Logically, her director position shouldn't fear her. However, the connections Hannah Myers had were not something a director like her could shake. Hearing the door close, John Carter, holding his breath in the wardrobe, finally exhaled in relief. It seemed Victoria Snow had left. Sure enough, not long after the door closed, quick footsteps approached the wardrobe where John Carter was hiding. With a click, the wardrobe door opened, and John Carter finally saw the light of day. Victoria Snow's sudden appearance had caused John Carter's arousal, which had been on the verge of exploding, to deflate instantly, taking with it the intense desire he had felt. With the desire gone, John Carter's mind cleared. So, the moment Hannah Myers opened the wardrobe, he didn't hesitate, turning to leave. But as he turned, Hannah Myers grabbed his arm. "We're not finished yet. Where do you think you're going?" John Carter gave a nervous laugh. About that, maybe next time. It's almost time to get off work. It wouldn't be good if someone saw us." Hannah Myers' face darkened at his words. However, it was true that they were only about 10 minutes away from clocking out. Reluctantly, she nodded. "Fine." With Hannah Myers' agreement, John Carter practically fled towards the door. With the flames of desire extinguished, John Carter felt a pang of regret mixed with relief. It was fortunate that Victoria Snow had appeared when she did. If he and Hannah Myers had become physically involved, his reputation would have been ruined. If the purity he'd painstakingly maintained for 24 years was about to be tarnished by a married woman, John Carter wouldn't even know where to begin crying. But before John Carter could take more than a few steps, he heard Hannah Myers' voice from behind, "Oh, by the way, are you free after work today? I'd like to treat you to dinner." Hearing this, a chill ran down John Carter's spine. Moments ago, lost in passion, he'd forgotten everything. Now, recalling his actions, fear gnawed at him. Though his understanding of women was practically non-existent, John Carter wasn't a fool in other areas. He immediately grasped Hannah Myers's intentions. Dinner? He knew exactly what she was after. Without turning around, John Carter said, "I have a prior engagement today. I'm not free." With that, he bolted, ignoring whether Hannah Myers was angry or not. Only after escaping the women's locker room did John Carter breathe a sigh of relief, as if he'd just cheated death. But before he could fully recover, he spotted a figure in the distance. Even from behind, John Carter recognized Victoria Snow, who had just left the women's locker room. Seeing Victoria Snow, John Carter's heart leaped into his throat. Fortunately, Victoria Snow had her back to the locker room and didn't notice his sudden appearance. She was walking with her head down. Seeing that she hadn't noticed him, John Carter quietly circled around, suppressing his astonishment, and coughed softly, ahem, Victoria Snow, what are you doing here?" Hearing her name, Victoria Snow quickly turned around. Seeing John Carter, a smile brightened her gloomy face. "Oh. John Carter, what are you doing here?" John Carter forced a laugh. "Just taking a walk, familiarizing myself with the company." "Oh, I see. I just came out of the locker room." "Oh," John Carter replied perfunctorily. Victoria Snow suddenly seemed to remember something, her expression turning mysterious. "Guess who I just saw in the locker room?" John Carter shook his head. Seeing him shake his head, Victoria Snow said with a hint of frustration, I just ran into Supervisor Liu in the locker room. She scolded me for being in there before work was over. John Carter, preoccupied with erasing his own dark history, blurted out without thinking, oh, it's no big deal. Just a scolding, no pay docked. How do you know I didn't get my pay docked? John Carter froze, realizing his slip-up. He gave a strained laugh. I guessed. Victoria Snow looked at him suspiciously but said nothing. The sign on the locker room door clearly stated, no men allowed. Even if she racked her brain, she couldn't imagine that John Carter had just been inside, overhearing her conversation with Hannah Myers. Under Victoria Snow's suspicious gaze, John Carter quickly composed himself. Why are you looking at me like that? I may be handsome, but I don't need anyone's validation. Victoria Snow immediately burst into laughter at John Carter's words. I used to think you were quite honest, why do you seem like a different person today? John Carter waved his hand nonchalantly, that's because you don't truly understand me yet. Victoria Snow brushed aside her previous aggrieved expression and said with a smile, all right, let's not talk about this anymore. It's almost closing time, shall we go eat together? Outwardly, Victoria Snow appeared unfazed, but inwardly, she likely hadn't fully escaped the shadow of yesterday's events. However, since she didn't say anything, John Carter didn't pry. He simply nodded and replied, sure, I was just about to suggest that. The conversation drifted further off topic. By the time they reached the first-floor sales area of Golden Charm Company, it was precisely closing time. Without another word, they quickly exited the sales area and headed towards a less crowded restaurant. This was the busiest time of day for restaurants, especially in this bustling city center. If they were even a few minutes later, every restaurant would likely be packed with office workers. But fate seemed unwilling to let John Carter and Victoria Snow enjoy their meal in peace. Just as they stepped out of Golden Charm Company, someone John Carter really didn't want to see again appeared before them. Both John Carter and Victoria Snow stopped dead in their tracks as this person appeared. Richard Knight. Recognizing the figure blocking their path, Victoria Snow's face paled, then flushed with anger. I was looking for you, and I can't believe you showed up yourself. The man standing before them was none other than Richard Knight, the man who had tried to assault Victoria Snow the previous night. Richard Knight maintained his usual sullen demeanor and didn't answer Victoria Snow's question. His eyes swept back and forth between John Carter and Victoria Snow before he sneered, I knew you were messing around with this pretty boy. I can't believe you called me this morning to break up, and now you're already a couple with him. Where's all that talk about loyalty you used to preach to me? What nonsense are you spouting? Victoria Snow snapped, her eyes blazing with fury at Richard Knight. Richard Knight casually glanced at John Carter. Noticing the new employee ID card on John Carter's chest, a contemptuous smirk twisted his lips. And I thought you were something special. Turns out you're just a chump. Chapter 22, gradually capturing the heart before John Carter or Victoria Snow could react in anger, Richard Knight continued, I can't believe you'd stoop so low as to be with this trash. With every chump and trash that came out of Richard Knight's mouth, John Carter's patience wore thinner, his expression darkening. John Carter coldly retorted, don't spew your garbage here. Last night's incident isn't over yet. If you don't want to end up in court, you'd better disappear from our sight as quickly as possible. Richard Knight looked as if he'd heard the funniest joke, leaning closer to John Carter with an incredulous expression. Oh. Did I hear you right? Are you threatening me? Before John Carter could respond, Victoria Snow acted. A sharp slap echoed as her slender hand made intimate contact with Richard Knight's approaching face. Ouch! This sound immediately attracted a wave of astonishment from the surrounding people. A girl, in broad daylight, dared to hit a man, and even slapped him in the face. This injected excitement into the mundane lives of these office workers, like discovering new territory, and they all flocked towards the scene. As Victoria Snow withdrew her hand, a purplish-red handprint quickly appeared on Richard Knight's left cheek. He seemed momentarily unable to accept this reality, clutching his face where Victoria Snow had slapped him, stunned and speechless. As the crowd grew larger and larger, Richard Knight finally regained his senses. His face quickly turned purple as he stared at Victoria Snow. "You dare hit me?" Victoria Snow didn't feel any discomfort for having slapped Richard Knight in front of so many people. Her face full of indignation, she said, "Yes, I hit you." John Carter hadn't expected Victoria Snow to suddenly lash out, but seeing Richard Knight's face alternating between pale and livid, he couldn't help but want to applaud her on the spot. The onlookers seemed to relish this dramatic scene, and the crowd grew thicker and thicker, all wanting to see how Richard Knight would react after being slapped. John Carter, both excited and afraid that Richard Knight would retaliate furiously, pulled Victoria Snow behind him as soon as she finished speaking. Richard Knight's cheek twitched as he stared at John Carter, saying each word deliberately, "You're really going to protect this vile woman?" John Carter, unafraid, coldly retorted, "You know what you did. That slap was cheap. Get lost while you can. If you don't leave, I'll tell everyone about the shameful thing you did last night." "You." Richard Knight gritted his teeth, his finger pointing at John Carter, trembling uncontrollably. He had originally come to reconcile with Victoria Snow. Knowing her as he did, he thought if he showed sincerity, she would likely forgive him. He never dreamed that after waiting at the door for so long, he would see Victoria Snow with the pretty boy who ruined his plans, and then be slapped by her in front of everyone. This was a profound humiliation. John Carter felt a twinge of apprehension. A cornered, insidious man like Richard Knight, slapped by a woman in public, was likely about to explode in a fit of rage. Just as John Carter braced himself for Richard Knight's crazed reaction, he looked at John Carter with venomous eyes, gritting his teeth and saying, "Fine, punk, you've got guts." After Richard Knight left, Victoria Snow glared at John Carter with some displeasure. "Why did you pull me back just now?" John Carter gave a wry smile. "Did you want me to just watch him slap you back in front of everyone?" Victoria Snow's face, though still sullen, couldn't deny the truth in John Carter's words. Just as John Carter and Victoria Snow fell silent, a voice suddenly rang out beside them. "Victoria Snow, was that your boyfriend you just hit? You're quite the firecracker." John Carter turned his head and, upon seeing the speaker, his body instantly tensed. It was Hannah Myers, the woman who had just led him into the women's changing room and teased him. Section Chief Lou, Victoria Snow beside him murmured softly, then quickly lowered her head. Hannah Myers slowly approached the two, a flicker of barely detectable hatred flashing in her eyes, especially upon seeing John Carter and Victoria Snow standing so close. Yet, her voice remained calm as she inquired, "So, you two know each other?" John Carter gave a strained laugh. "Indeed, Victoria Snow is the one who brought me here to apply." "Oh, so our CEO brought you here. It seems you're quite fortunate." Hannah Myers's acrid tone stunned John Carter. "She's the CEO?" He had always assumed Victoria Snow was a regular employee, and now he was utterly astonished. "Victoria Snow," calmly replied, "it's just a title. We all work for the boss." Then, turning to John Carter, she asked, "And you, so you know Supervisor Lou?" John Carter, fearing Hannah Myers might reveal something earth-shattering, hastily explained, "Supervisor Lou is a really good person. She just showed me around the company." "Oh, is that so?" Victoria Snow didn't dwell on it, but turned to Hannah Myers and said, "Supervisor Lou, you haven't eaten yet, have you? How about I treat you?" John Carter's heart lurched at her words. Before Hannah Myers could respond, he quickly waved his hands. "No need, no need." Victoria Snow tilted her head, looking at John Carter with surprise. "Why not?" John Carter said seriously, "Supervisor Lou is busy with work. We shouldn't disturb her." Goodbye. Without giving Hannah Myers a chance to speak, he pulled a bewildered Victoria Snow towards a distant restaurant. Only when they reached the restaurant door did John Carter stop, panting. All right, this restaurant isn't crowded yet. Let's go in and grab a seat. Why are you so nervous? John Carter rolled his eyes. I'm not nervous. But why is your face so red? John Carter touched his face, trying to maintain his composure. Probably because I ran so fast. It's only 50 meters from the company gate. There's no need to be so winded. John Carter, unwilling to dwell on the topic, waved his hand dismissively. Forget it. Eating is the most important thing right now. I'm starving. Let's eat first. Afraid of further awkward questions from Victoria Snow, John Carter entered the restaurant. Victoria Snow, still puzzled, followed him in silently. Only after the waiter brought their food did John Carter casually ask, by the way, what kind of person is your supervisor, Lou? Victoria Snow frowned. Why are you suddenly asking about her? John Carter said seriously, I'll be working at the company, so it's normal to learn about my colleagues. Victoria Snow pondered for a moment before replying, Supervisor Lou is the wife of the vice president. It's because of that connection that she became the sales supervisor after only 6 months at the company. And? A look of discomfort flickered across Victoria Snow's face. Do you really want to know? John Carter solemnly nodded, naturally. Victoria Snow glanced left and right, seeing no Golden Charm Company colleagues around, lowered her voice, all right, if you're so curious, I'll tell you. Team leader Lou is notorious in the company for being promiscuous. John Carter's eyes widened, what do you mean? Victoria Snow said awkwardly, she's flirted with several male employees. It's all over the company, you just wouldn't know since you're new. John Carter's curiosity deepened, isn't she the vice president's wife? Doesn't he do anything about it? Victoria Snow covered her mouth, giggling, I heard from colleagues that team leader Lou does it to get back at her husband, the vice president. John Carter was bewildered, get back at him? For what? Though not her own affair, Victoria Snow still felt a bit embarrassed. Before joining the company, the vice president had 2 mistresses here. Someone saw them together, and it spread. Team leader Lou found out and somehow forced him to give her a job at the company. The mistresses quit after she arrived. So that's it. John Carter suddenly understood. Thinking of Xiaomi's immediate flirtation with him, he couldn't help but shudder. Has your team leader Lou flirted with anyone else in the company? Without hesitation, Victoria Snow replied, no. But seeing John Carter shudder, she looked at him in surprise, don't tell me she's made a move on you. John Carter startled, shaking his head vehemently, absolutely not. It's my first day. Besides, even if she tried, a righteous gentleman like myself wouldn't be swayed by such a shameless woman. Victoria Snow, seemingly recalling John Carter covering her with a blanket the previous night, blushed, retorting, I just met you. How do I know if you're a righteous gentleman? John Carter set down his chopsticks, declaring, we're not just neighbors, we're colleagues. Time will prove everything. You'll see what kind of person I am. Victoria Snow chuckled at his seriousness, all right. Actually, I meant to say, regardless of what kind of person you are, the fact that you didn't take advantage of me last night tells me you're not a lecher like Richard Knight. John Carter wiped away a bead of cold sweat, relieved he'd held back last night. Otherwise, the world would have another lecher. The afternoon shift dragged on tediously. Although John Carter suggested starting product promotion, sales manager Strong insisted he familiarize himself with the company first. John Carter was happy to be idle. Besides learning the ropes, his main priority was dodging the predatory Hannah Myers. He was utterly terrified of her, feeling like prey the moment he stepped into Golden Charm Company. Despite his fear, John Carter remained confident in his attractiveness. Chapter 23, unforeseen blessings and misfortunes. It wasn't until the next day that John Carter finally got the chance to show his skills, because today he had to officially go out and peddle the company's jewelry. Holding a $200 necklace from the company, John Carter felt like he had found a treasure, and ran outside alone. As soon as he arrived on the bustling street, John Carter confidently directed his gaze towards the various beautiful women passing by. Although John Carter felt that his gaze towards the surrounding beauties was gentle and pure, in the eyes of others, it was a bit different, as the following example demonstrates. A beautiful woman swayed her hips as she approached. Just as John Carter was about to greet her and make his pitch, the woman snorted, "I saw you staring at me from afar, you creep." John Carter's eyes widened innocently, the words on the tip of his tongue unspoken. He stared blankly as the beautiful woman swayed her slender waist and disappeared from sight. His heart felt like it had been doused with a bucket of ice water, chilled to the core. Despite this small setback, John Carter couldn't give up so easily. He continued to rack his brains, trying to sell the necklace in his hand to passers-by, but he no longer dared to stare at them with the same burning gaze. Another beautiful woman walked by, and John Carter stepped forward with a smile. "Excuse me, miss, could I trouble you for 2 minutes? Our company is currently running a promotion." Before he could finish, the woman snorted, "More of those annoying salespeople who babble on the street all day. Get out of my way." John Carter felt dejected again, but told himself, a successful person will experience all kinds of twists and turns and hardships. This is just the beginning, I can endure this. However, reality was cruel. The next 15 people John Carter encountered were all much the same, not a single one was willing to glance at the necklace in his box. It seems that this step-by-step approach really isn't working. I need to change my sales tactics. John Carter muttered to himself, then approached a woman in her mid-30s. "Auntie, I see that the space between your eyebrows is dark and your complexion is sallow. These are signs of misfortune. I have here a family heirloom necklace that can ward off evil and protect against disaster." Before John Carter could finish, the woman's face darkened. "Are you cursing me?" John Carter, exasperated, could only force a smile and approach a young woman of 18 or 19. "Young lady, please wait a moment. I have a favor to ask." Before he could finish, he was met with a disdainful snort. "Cut the act. We're all modern people here. Hello, beautiful. Haven't we met somewhere before?" The beautiful woman curled her lip. "Don't be so creepy, okay? That line is so old. Hey, lady, our company is currently running a giveaway. First come, first served. I have here a solid gold necklace." Before he could finish, the woman immediately said warily, "What do you want?" "I don't have any money." Next, John Carter saw a young woman, about 22, dressed flashily walking by, and he hurriedly approached her with a bright smile. "Miss, I have." Before he could finish, the young woman turned around and glared at him. "Jerk, who are you calling miss?" Watching the provocatively dressed woman stride away, John Carter felt truly hurt. He tried everything, but every time he took out the necklace to try and sell it to passers-by, they all avoided him like the plague, without even a glance. Just as John Carter was feeling discouraged and about to give up, he saw a woman in business attire walking by. John Carter had lost all enthusiasm, but this woman seemed interested in the box in his hand. Just one glance from her revived his dejected spirits. Gritting his teeth, he told himself, "All right, this is the last one. If it's the same as before, I'll quit this damn job." Putting on a friendly smile again, John Carter quickly walked up to the woman. "Miss, beautiful, guess what's in my box? If you guess right, I'll give it to you." This office worker was around 27 or 28, with shoulder-length black hair and dimples that flickered on her flawless face. Hearing John Carter's words, her dimples deepened as she smiled gently. "Really?" Seeing someone finally take an interest in the box in his hand, John Carter was almost moved to tears. Casting off his previous dejection, he said excitedly, "Of course, but you only get one guess." John Carter's intention was simple: if this beautiful woman actually guessed correctly, he would pay for the necklace out of his own pocket and submit the payment to the company. The beautiful woman stared intently at the box in John Carter's hand for a moment. "If I guess correctly, will you really give it to me?" John Carter nodded vigorously. "Of course, the people of Golden Charm Company keep their word." The beautiful woman looked at John Carter in surprise, but then said with a smile, "All right, just because you said that, I'll guess. Even if I'm wrong, I'll buy it." John Carter hadn't expected the woman before him to be so straightforward. He immediately held the box out to her. "All right, then take a guess." The beautiful woman pondered for a moment, then furrowed her brow. "I guess there's a necklace inside." As soon as she said those words, John Carter's smile froze on his face. He stared at her, speechless. How could she guess it right away? Could she have known beforehand? Despite his inner thoughts, John Carter nodded and forced a smile. "Very good, you guessed correctly. This necklace is yours." With that, John Carter ceremoniously opened the box for the beautiful woman to see before handing it over. However, the beautiful woman didn't reach out to take it. She smiled and said, "Are you really giving it to me?" John Carter forced a smile. "Of course, I just said it. The people of Golden Charm Company keep their word." The beautiful woman didn't refuse any further and accepted the necklace from John Carter's hand. Watching the beautiful woman accept the necklace from his hand, a flicker of regret crossed John Carter's mind, but then he felt relieved. Even if he gave it away, he only needed to report a $200 expense to the company, effectively completing his task. However, just as John Carter's face fell, the beauty before him smiled and said, "I've been observing you over there for a long time. Dedicated salespeople like you are truly rare. I think highly of you." John Carter furrowed his brow, a puzzled expression on his face. "You've been watching me?" The beautiful woman tossed the necklace back to John Carter, stating casually, "I'm Charlotte Lane, CEO of Golden Charm Company." Hearing the beauty before him utter those words, John Carter's smile froze on his face. He hadn't expected the company's CEO to be so unconventional, not staying put in her office, but instead running down to watch a small-time employee like him pitch products, even pretending to be a customer. Sighing inwardly, John Carter smiled at Charlotte Lane. "CEO, why would you have the free time to watch a small fry like me peddle goods? With so much work at the company, why bother with this?" Charlotte Lane waved her hand dismissively. "Don't you know that work must start from the ground up? Enough of this, come with me to the office for a moment." John Carter looked at the necklace in his hand and offered it to Charlotte Lane. "CEO, I said earlier that if you guessed correctly, I would give you this necklace. Please, take it." Charlotte Lane, having just turned and swayed her slender waist, preparing to return to the company, froze at John Carter's words. She turned back to look at him, a playful smile on her bright red lips. "You keep it for me. I'll ask for it back when I remember." "Oh." John Carter nodded, carefully placing the necklace in his pocket. Charlotte Lane watched his serious expression, the playful smile at the corner of her mouth fading, replaced by a look of seriousness. This man is definitely trainable talent. Even the smallest details are handled so well. He's bound for great things, Charlotte Lane thought to herself, discarding her previous thoughts and forming a new idea. "Follow me." John Carter finished gathering his things, looked up, and followed Charlotte Lane towards the company building. Rush hour had passed, and the elevator was no longer crowded. John Carter and Charlotte Lane stood in opposite corners, like complete strangers. "Hey, I haven't asked you yet. What's your name?" The numbers on the elevator display ticked upwards as Charlotte Lane suddenly spoke. "Huh." John Carter was pondering why Charlotte Lane had appeared at his sales pitch. If it was random, his luck was truly terrible. Fortunately, he hadn't been slacking off earlier. My name is John Carter. John Carter's wandering thoughts were finally pulled back to reality by Charlotte Lane's words. He answered seriously. Charlotte Lane was about to ask more when the elevator dinged to a halt. Seeing the busy employees outside, she said nothing more, but gestured for John Carter to follow her. Two beautiful women at the reception desk, who had been chatting, immediately straightened up and gave standard smiles upon seeing Charlotte Lane. CEO, good morning. The beauties, having just adjusted their posture, stiffened as they saw the figure trailing behind Charlotte Lane, their smiles turning strained. Like a sneak, John Carter tiptoed behind Charlotte Lane, grinning at the two pretty girls at the reception desk. Then, he continued to trail Charlotte Lane. After Charlotte Lane and John Carter disappeared, the two pretty girls took a while to relax their stiff expressions, whispering to each other. This new guy's got some serious luck, don't you think? Bumped into Hannah Myers this morning, now he's tailing the CEO. Wonder what's next. Maybe he's blessed by a lucky star. Though, whether this is a blessing or a curse remains to be seen. Their gossip was brief. They resumed their standard reception smiles, awaiting the next arrival. Chapter 24, Toad's Heart. John Carter followed Charlotte Lane, step by step, towards the CEO's office. Busy employees paused their work to greet Charlotte Lane as she appeared. Seeing John Carter trailing behind Charlotte Lane, their expressions stiffened, mirroring the receptionist's earlier reaction. Admiring the beautiful female employees, John Carter thought, this place is a haven for gorgeous women. A feast for the eyes. I wonder if I could find a girlfriend here. Years later, living happily with his beauties, John Carter would chuckle at this thought, prompting a playful assault from them, suspecting him of harboring wicked ideas. This future scenario was beyond his current comprehension. For now, he just hoped to do his job well, and finding a beautiful girlfriend would be a bonus. Hurry up. After exchanging pleasantries with the employees, Charlotte Lane turned, saw John Carter's strange smile, nudged him, and told him to follow. John Carter snapped out of his reverie and followed Charlotte Lane, head down. Charlotte Lane had a slender waist, even her back radiated allure as she swayed forward. John Carter, initially looking down, was captivated by the click of her heels against the floor, his gaze drawn to her. He'd glimpsed Charlotte Lane's beauty earlier, now, a closer look confirmed his initial impression. Women often wear black stockings to accentuate their legs. Not Charlotte Lane. She wore white stockings, clinging to the exquisite curves of her legs. White typically makes one appear larger, but on Charlotte Lane, it had the opposite effect, hinting at even greater beauty beneath the fabric. He stared at her back, imagining her stripped of her clothes. Just then, his X-ray vision activated. In John Carter's eyes, Charlotte Lane was transformed. She now strode down the hallway in pink lingerie. John Carter gulped, unable to continue the fantasy. He was a novice in the realm of romance. Staring like this could lead to trouble, making him a laughingstock and jeopardizing his job. His X-ray vision faded, and Charlotte Lane returned to her business attire. Finally arriving at the office, Charlotte Lane gestured towards the chair in front of her desk, indicating for John Carter to sit. She picked up the phone. Lucy, bring me the new employee's file. Yes, that's right, John Carter, the one who started today. The two sat facing each other, silent for a long moment. A short while later, a beautiful woman knocked and entered. General Manager, here's the file you requested. Yes, leave it there. Charlotte Lane tapped the desk in front of her, instructing the assistant to place the documents down. Is there anything else, ma'am? No, you can go back to your work. The beautiful woman replied and exited the office, casting a curious glance at John Carter as she left. She wondered what was so special about this new employee that the general manager was paying him such attention on his first day. As Charlotte Lane looked over the file her assistant had just brought, a wave of anxiety washed over John Carter. What's going on? Does she know I pulled strings to get this job? But I clearly passed the interview. Even if I did have some help, it was just a referral. There's no need for this. General Manager, may I ask why you called me here? If there's nothing important, I'll go back to marketing the products. John Carter cautiously observed Charlotte Lane. Hearing John Carter's words, Charlotte Lane looked up at him. What are you afraid of? It's not like I'm going to eat you. Or is there something you're hiding? Charlotte Lane's words caught John Carter off guard, and he fell silent, looking around the office. After a moment, Charlotte Lane finished reviewing the documents and asked John Carter, were you referred by one of our employees? Here it comes, John Carter thought to himself, quickly replying, yes, I suppose she felt sorry for me being unemployed and recommended me. It has nothing to do with her, though. Oh, so I shouldn't thank her for finding me such a good employee. Hearing the sarcasm in Charlotte Lane's voice, John Carter realized she wasn't looking for trouble but rather valued his abilities. No, General Manager Lane, you absolutely must thank her. Not just you, I should thank her too. Without her, I wouldn't have found such a good place, such a good job. Do you really think so? Charlotte Lane stopped her sarcastic tone, her expression turning serious. I absolutely do. May I be struck by lightning if I'm lying? Hearing John Carter's smooth talking, Charlotte Lane felt a sense of trust in him. I've just glanced over your resume. Honestly, your qualifications aren't the best in our company, but I've carefully observed you. With your diligence and hard work, you're bound to achieve great things. Therefore, I've made a decision. As Charlotte Lane spoke, John Carter's mouth slowly formed an O shape. So this was why she had called him in. I've decided to appoint you as the sales team leader. I believe with your abilities and qualities, you're fully capable of handling this position and leading your team to achieve great results for the company. You're someone who will go far. I won't be wrong about this. General Director Lane, this isn't quite right, is it? John Carter scratched his head, slightly embarrassed. I've only been here a day, and you're already giving me such a heavy responsibility. What will the veteran employees think? Others will definitely think I've done something. Only you. What could you possibly have done? You should take a look at yourself. Seeing John Carter's embarrassed expression, Charlotte Lane couldn't help but laugh. Looking at Charlotte Lane, then back at himself, John Carter suddenly realized he was overthinking it. He and Charlotte Lane were a toad and a swan. The swan wouldn't lower itself to fly beside the toad, and the toad could only watch the swan soar. He shouldn't entertain any further illusions. As long as your work is convincing, any rumors will disappear on their own, won't they? Besides, I'm not afraid of gossip. I believe you'll amaze those gossipmongers in the future. Alright, let's settle this. You'll take on the role of sales team leader. Charlotte Lane made the final decision. Leaving the office, John Carter had no choice but to follow Charlotte Lane out. Charlotte Lane clapped her hands, signaling everyone to stop working. I've decided to appoint our newcomer, John Carter, as the sales team leader. Everyone, give him a round of applause. Hearing Charlotte Lane's announcement, everyone was stunned. Then, they looked at John Carter, wondering what charm this newcomer possessed to be so valued by the general director upon arrival, directly becoming the sales team leader. The silence stretched on. Seeing the employees' reactions, Charlotte Lane became displeased. What's wrong? Do you have any objections to my decision? If you're dissatisfied, speak up now. Seeing Charlotte Lane's angry expression, the employees who were scrutinizing John Carter snapped back to reality and hurriedly applauded. Mr. Carter, congratulations. I hope you can lead us to achieve great results. A charming beauty dared to sidle up to John Carter, winking at him with a suggestive look. John Carter took the beauty's soft hand, momentarily stunned. After all these years, this was the first time a woman, especially such a beauty, had actively thrown herself at him. He couldn't help but feel a stir of excitement. Charlotte Lane, noticing John Carter's expression, coughed. The beauty awkwardly retreated, casting a flirtatious glance at John Carter as she left. Although everyone felt John Carter wasn't qualified for the position, they dared not voice their opinions due to Charlotte Lane's authority. Waves of applause echoed through the office area. Satisfied with everyone's reaction, Charlotte Lane nodded and returned to her office. John Carter walked over to the sales team's work area. "Hello everyone, my name is John Carter. I look forward to working with you all." Although John Carter wore a bright smile, the saying, "one doesn't hit a smiling face," seemed to have lost its effect here. Everyone just gave him cold, indifferent humps, lacking the enthusiasm they displayed when Charlotte Lane was present. Seeing their expressions, John Carter knew that as a newcomer who hadn't proven himself yet, being appointed sales team leader would naturally breed resentment among the veteran employees. Their cold treatment was to be expected. He silently resolved to achieve tangible results, to prove he wasn't just coasting, and to justify Charlotte Lane's faith in him. He had to demonstrate his competence and live up to her expectations. Setting a goal for himself, John Carter silently encouraged himself, raised his head, and continued to smile, saying, "Currently, I'm not very familiar with everyone, so I plan to have a team meeting tomorrow. I hope everyone will be on time. In the future, don't be late for work. If you have any matters, you can come directly to me." After speaking, he turned and returned to his desk. Not knowing what to do for a while, when it was time to leave work, John Carter packed up his things and left for home. Now John Carter's room had been tidied up by him, extremely neat and no longer messy as before. If Victoria Snow saw John Carter's room again, she definitely wouldn't think it was the home of a single man. A knock came from outside. John Carter opened the door to see, and sure enough, speak of the devil and he doth appear. The person knocking was none other than Victoria Snow. Hashtag Chapter 25, Cooking. Only knows instant noodles. Victoria Snow had changed out of her work clothes and into her usual casual wear. She wore a white chiffon blouse, through which her beige undergarments were faintly visible. Below, she wore jeans that hugged her rounded buttocks. Even in such ordinary clothes, Victoria Snow's alluring figure was evident. John Carter was momentarily stunned. "Well, aren't you going to invite me in?" Victoria Snow asked, extending her hand in front of John Carter with a smile. "Oh, of course, please come in." John Carter bowed, letting Victoria Snow into his room. Seeing the drastic change in John Carter's room, no longer messy as before but incredibly tidy, Victoria Snow looked at John Carter with great surprise. Seeing Victoria Snow's surprised look, John Carter smiled. "I used to be too lazy to clean up when I was alone. I just tidied up yesterday. Then it became like this." "Oh." Hearing John Carter's explanation, Victoria Snow smiled and nodded. "I wasn't at the company today. I was out on business. After I got back, some close colleagues told me that you've become the sales team leader, my superior now. You're so awesome." Hearing the slight curiosity in Victoria Snow's tone, John Carter hastily explained to her how he became the sales team leader. After listening to John Carter's story, Victoria Snow smiled. "I know, Director Lane is like that. She likes to promote talented people. I also got my current position thanks to her. Did you think I came here to reprimand you? Didn't I think you might not understand? This happening to me, it's hard to believe no matter how you look at it," John Carter stammered. "Yeah, it is hard to believe." Hearing Victoria Snow say this, John Carter's face fell. "All right, I'm just teasing you. I came here to invite you over for dinner to celebrate your promotion. So I'm in for a treat then." John Carter smiled and followed Victoria Snow to her room. Victoria Snow's room was as tidy as ever, with a faint feminine fragrance. There was no food laid out on the table as John Carter had imagined. didn't you say you were inviting me for dinner? John Carter looked at Victoria Snow, puzzled. I was planning to invite you for dinner, but I was afraid that you wouldn't be here when I finished cooking, so I came to get you first, then I'll cook. Victoria Snow had a mischievous look on her face, as if asking John Carter if she wasn't clever for thinking of this. John Carter gave a wry smile. Why wouldn't I be here? I don't know anyone else around here. Didn't you just get a promotion? I was worried you'd be out celebrating with someone, and I'd miss my chance. Victoria Snow didn't realize a hint of jealousy laced her words as she pushed John Carter onto the sofa. Just sit here. I'll cook, and you can relax and enjoy. John Carter obediently sat on the sofa, watching Victoria Snow turn and bustle into the kitchen. Calling it a kitchen was generous, it was more of a small partitioned area. From the sofa, he could see the entire space. Victoria Snow put on an apron and began to cook. John Carter looked around the room to entertain himself. Victoria Snow's apartment was undeniably feminine. On the dark TV stand sat the television John Carter had carried up that day. Remembering the charged encounter, the feel of her soft hand in his, a familiar warmth stirred within him. He swallowed, shifting his gaze. After he'd mentioned her window coverings weren't fully closed, she'd hung a new curtain, completely obscuring the window. The beige fabric with its delicate floral pattern spoke to her meticulous nature. His gaze drifted to Victoria Snow in the kitchen. Wearing a dark apron, she chopped vegetables, a stray strand of hair repeatedly falling into her face. She kept tucking it behind her ear to keep it out of the food. Watching her, John Carter was reminded of his childhood, his father, like him now, sitting on the sofa, his mother cooking in the kitchen, and him playing nearby. Victoria Snow looked up, smiling at him. Don't be impatient. Dinner's almost ready. John Carter, lost in a reverie, felt a surge of excitement at her words. He jumped up from the sofa and headed towards the kitchen, his hands reaching out as if to embrace her slender waist. Are you here to help? Victoria Snow sidestepped slightly, breaking the spell. He quickly withdrew his hands, chuckling awkwardly. I'm hungry, and you're taking so long. I just came to see how things were going, maybe lend a hand. Do you know how to cook? A man living on his own has to learn how to cook to survive. John Carter gave a self-deprecating laugh. All right then, you can chop the vegetables. I'll check on the pot. Victoria Snow handed him the knife, wiped her hands, and went to check on the food. Despite his claim, John Carter's cooking usually consisted of instant noodles and other simple meals. He'd never attempted anything elaborate. He froze, unsure how to proceed. He fumbled with the knife before hesitantly making a cut. Victoria Snow turned back to see this. She rushed over. Hey, that's not how you chop vegetables. She grabbed his hand, stumbled, and fell against him. The sudden contact jolted John Carter, and the knife clattered onto the cutting board. They both snapped back to reality. Victoria Snow, blushing, pushed him away. Go sit down. I'll call you when dinner's ready. John Carter didn't linger, figuring he wasn't much help here and should just stay put. Victoria Snow finally finished cooking and brought the food to the table. The aroma stimulated John Carter's hunger pangs, and he quickly sat down, grabbing his chopsticks. Smack! Victoria Snow wrapped John Carter's hand with her chopsticks. He retracted his hand, looking at her in confusion. You haven't washed your hands. Go wash them. Kind Victoria, I'm so hungry. Can I skip washing my hands? John Carter pleaded, hoping she'd relent. But Victoria Snow was unmoved, insisting he wash his hands. Grumbling about the fuss women made over a simple meal, John Carter went to the bathroom. Watching John Carter trudge to the bathroom, Victoria Snow retrieved a bottle of wine and 2 glasses from the cupboard, placing them on the table. Why did you get the wine out? John Carter asked, his sharp eyes spotting the bottle as he returned from the bathroom. It's your promotion, after all. We have to celebrate, Victoria Snow said, pouring wine for both of them. She downed a glass and quietly began to eat. The small room was silent, filled only with the sounds of their eating. The quiet prompted John Carter to break the silence. This is delicious, John Carter complimented, picking up a piece of vegetable and smiling at Victoria Snow. Eat up then, Victoria Snow replied absently, seemingly lost in thought. John Carter resigned himself to eating in silence. Finishing his bowl quickly, John Carter felt he'd go mad if this continued. Let me tell you a story from my childhood, he offered. Victoria Snow seemed to snap back to attention. She looked at John Carter with dreamy eyes, a beautiful curve gracing her red lips. What story? I was a mischievous child, John Carter began, lost in reminiscence. Once, I saw my dad shaving and wanted to try. He refused, so I waited until he left for work, snuck his razor, and shaved my own face. I ended up shaving off both my eyebrows. My mom had to draw them on for over a month before I could go back to school. That's nothing. My childhood was even more embarrassing, Victoria Snow said, intrigued by John Carter's story and eager to share her own. Childhood memories, the most beautiful time of anyone's life, provided endless conversation, and the atmosphere between them gradually warmed. I can't believe you were so funny as a child. You seem so gentle now, Victoria Snow giggled, covering her mouth. Lowering her hand, she accidentally dropped her chopsticks. John Carter bent down to pick them up, as did Victoria Snow. Their hands touched, her soft hand brushing against his larger one. He quickly let go. I was just trying to help. I didn't mean anything. Feeling the warmth of his hand, Victoria Snow let out a soft moan. She picked up the chopsticks and placed them on the table. Both blushed, the pleasant atmosphere replaced by awkwardness. Knock, knock, knock. A deafening pounding echoed from outside, accompanied by a man's coarse cursing. Victoria Snow, open this damn door, I gotta talk to you. Victoria Snow, no longer hesitant, walked to the door and opened it. Richard Knight, what are you doing here? You think I can still trust you after what you did? Richard Knight, reeking of alcohol, softened his demeanor upon seeing Victoria Snow. Snowy, I was just out of my mind back then, please forgive me. Look how good I've been to you before. Let me in first, we can talk things through. He finished with a burp, the stench of alcohol almost making Victoria Snow gag. Hashtag chapter 26, just let me go, out of your mind. You think, out of my mind excuses everything. Let me tell you, I, Victoria Snow, am not some easy woman. From the day you drugged me, there's nothing between us anymore. Victoria Snow, her anger fueled by Richard Knight's appearance, slammed the door shut, refusing to look at him. Observing Victoria Snow's furious expression, John Carter cautiously inquired, what's wrong? Do you need my help? No need, he's just a lunatic. Come on, let's drink. Victoria Snow lifted her glass, downing its contents in one gulp before John Carter could react. Outside, Richard Knight continued to plead for Victoria Snow's forgiveness. Victoria Snow silently drank, glass after glass, without a word. Seeing his pleas fall on deaf ears, Richard Knight's true colors emerged. Victoria Snow, you goddamn whore, open the damn door. I just wanna fuck you. You're my girlfriend, it's only natural. You put on this innocent act, but who knows how many guys you've been with. Richard Knight's words brought tears to Victoria Snow's beautiful eyes. John Carter rolled up his sleeves, ready to confront him, but Victoria Snow held him back. Just leave him. I don't want to see him again. He already thinks of me that way, there's no point arguing. John Carter relented, offering Victoria Snow a tissue. Don't cry, he's not worth it. When there was still no response from inside, Richard Knight stopped yelling. After some rustling, he produced a key and unlocked Victoria Snow's door. Richard Knight burst through the door to see John Carter handing Victoria Snow a tissue. He let out a harsh laugh. I knew this whore wouldn't open the door, she's got a guy hidden inside. I told you, you're a whore, but you wouldn't admit it. I just wanna fuck you, and you're playing hard to get. Richard Knight strode forward, shoving Victoria Snow to the ground, scattering food across the table. He glared at John Carter. Oh, isn't this the punk who helped you carry your TV the other day? So you two have been hooking up since then, huh? You hit it well. Richard Knight, don't talk nonsense, John Carter and I are just friends. Victoria Snow stood up, a dark bruise forming on her fair arm. Just friends? Just friends, and you two are having dinner together behind locked doors. Victoria Snow, do you think I'm stupid? Richard Knight, consumed by rage, raised his hand and slapped Victoria Snow across the face. What's the point of hitting a woman? A hand blocked Richard Knight's large one. John Carter, usually shielded by Victoria Snow, finally snapped. He kicked Richard Knight to the ground. You bastard, you scum, it's your damn luck that Victoria Snow even looks at you, and you treat her like this. Richard Knight, almost unconscious from drink, wanted to fight back but was utterly powerless. He could only curl up as John Carter rained blows down on him. Seeing Richard Knight's pathetic state, Victoria Snow pulled John Carter back. Stop it, let him go. John Carter reluctantly stopped. Richard Knight slowly got up, brushing himself off. Victoria Snow, you're cruel, you'll miss me. He then tried to lunge at her again. John Carter swung his fist, connecting squarely with Richard Knight's face, sending him crashing into the door with a loud bang. So much talk, are you even a man? Richard Knight, just go. You're drunk. I'll pretend this didn't happen. Victoria Snow turned her back to the door. Richard Knight staggered to his feet, still wanting to charge, but John Carter's presence deterred him. He finally left Victoria Snow's apartment, but not before threatening John Carter. I'll remember you, kid. Just you wait, I'll run you out of this city. Fine, I'll wait. With newfound courage, John Carter gave Richard Knight a hard kick and slammed the door shut. Helping Victoria Snow onto the sofa, John Carter began cleaning up the mess. Sigh, such a good meal gone to waste. After cleaning up, John Carter smiled at Victoria Snow. Thanks for the meal. I should get going. Don't worry about anything, get some rest, and call me if you need anything. As John Carter opened the door to leave, Victoria Snow called out. Could you stay and talk for a bit? I want someone here. I'm really tired. The alcohol had taken hold of Victoria Snow, her face was flushed, her eyes glistening with tears. Seeing her like this, John Carter couldn't bring himself to leave. He closed the door and sat beside her. Can I hug you? Without waiting for a reply, Victoria Snow snuggled into John Carter's arms, finding a comfortable position and lying down. I met Richard Knight at a bar. I was a bartender, and he was a mixologist. I was new in town, clueless about everything. Richard Knight took care of me. One time, I was working, and a man kept pushing drinks on me, buying more every time I finished one. I can't really handle alcohol, but I was broke and desperate, so I forced myself to drink. Richard Knight saw what was happening, smashed the bottle in my hand, and confronted the guy. He took me back to his small apartment and looked after me all night. I knew how cruel people could be. When I woke up the next morning and saw my clothes were still on, I knew he was someone I could rely on. He didn't touch me when I was at my most vulnerable. So, when he confessed his feelings, I said yes. We were happy, even though we were poor. We'd share a single apple. I never thought we'd end up like this. Victoria Snow's words trailed off, tears welling in her eyes. Without a tissue at hand, John Carter used his sleeve to wipe them away. Victoria Snow watched his clumsy attempts, then looked up at him with a wry smile. Am I being pathetic? Falling apart like this over a man? No, no. I know you're hurting, John Carter quickly reassured her. I'm so tired, she admitted, nuzzling her head against his chest. I just need someone to talk to. Will you listen? I'm listening. Tell me everything, John Carter said, gently stroking her shoulder and drawing her closer. Victoria Snow drifted into memory, her story beginning to unfold. As Victoria Snow recounted her past with Richard Knight, John Carter's awareness began to fade. The woman in his arms grew still. He looked down to find her fast asleep. The tracks of Victoria Snow's tears lingered on her cheeks, her eyes puffy and red. Strands of her beautiful hair, damp from crying, clung to her delicate face, creating a picture of captivating disarray. 2 faint teeth marks on her full lips hinted at the emotions she'd held back. Her silk blouse, disheveled from their earlier embrace, slipped precariously low, revealing the curve of her shoulder and the delicate line of her collarbone, rising and falling with each breath. John Carter's gaze drifted downwards, catching sight of the beige bra containing her breasts, 2 mounds of white straining against the fabric. The valley between them seemed an insurmountable divide. Her long legs were encased in tight jeans. Unbidden, his X-ray vision activated. Piece by piece, Victoria Snow's clothing vanished from John Carter's sight, leaving only her naked form. A soft moan escaped Victoria Snow's lips as she nestled closer to John Carter. A primal urge surged through John Carter, his body screaming in response, his arousal growing with each passing moment. A beautiful woman, drunk and vulnerable, lay in his arms. Only a gay man or an impotent one could resist such temptation. Angel and devil wrestled for control within John Carter's mind. Do it. She's drunk, she won't know. If she asks, say she came onto you, she trusts me. I can't take advantage of her like this. I'm a decent man. I won't stoop so low, don't be a fool. A woman like this, defenseless in your arms. Your blood isn't ice water, is it? You're not exactly a paragon of virtue, I may not be a paragon of virtue, but I won't be a scumbag. This is wrong. If I do this, are you really going to be a chump? A tear escaped Victoria Snow's eye and landed on John Carter's hand. She was crying in her sleep. All right. I'll leave you alone. John Carter carefully wiped the tear from her cheek, shifted to a more comfortable position, and holding Victoria Snow close, drifted off to sleep. Held close by John Carter, Victoria Snow's tightly furrowed brows relaxed into a smile, as if she had drifted into a pleasant dream. Awakened by the morning alarm, John Carter habitually reached for his phone on the nightstand, but his hand grasped only air, jolting him awake. Victoria Snow still lay nestled against him. John Carter's slightest movement startled her awake. Realizing her position, she quickly sat up and moved aside. Last night, you were exhausted last night, so I held you while I drifted off. Nothing happened, I assure you. John Carter stretched, stood up, and moved around a bit. Look at your clothes, you'll see I didn't do anything. Reassured, Victoria Snow checked her phone. Oh no, it's 8 o'clock. I'm late for work. John Carter, you should hurry and wash up too. It's not a good look to be late on your first day. Victoria Snow exclaimed, rushing to the bathroom. John Carter also returned to his room to gather his things and prepare for work. Despite their haste, they were still late. Hashtag Chapter 27, Health is the revolutionary capital. I'm so sorry, after inviting you to dinner last night and you seeing that, now I've made you late. Victoria Snow looked apologetically at John Carter. It's all right, it wasn't intentional. Hurry and get to work. John Carter smiled, gently nudging Victoria Snow forward. Once she was gone, he headed towards the sales team's area. The team had arrived long ago. Yesterday, John Carter had emphasized punctuality, and although they weren't entirely convinced, Charlotte Lane's authority ensured everyone was on time. Ironically, despite his insistence, John Carter, their team leader, was late, accompanied by a female employee. A female employee, observing John Carter conversing with someone at his desk, muttered to her colleague, "What's so special about him? Some people breeze in with beautiful women by their side, while others work hard and go unnoticed. What's different? He's got 2 eyes and a mouth, same as everyone else. Then why does he have it so easy? Why? Isn't it because of his smooth talk, charming the women and making them hang on his every word?" The speaker shot a pointed look at John Carter. They both shared a knowing smirk. Overhearing their conversation, John Carter, unable to contain his irritation, stood up and approached them, forcing a smile. His strained smile sent a shiver down their spines, fearing he might confront them. "Lucy," John Carter addressed one of them. She quickly responded, "Yes. Inform everyone in our team that there's a meeting at 1 p.m. today in the work area. There will be consequences for anyone who doesn't show up." The employee hastily relayed the message, "The new boss is flexing his muscles, everyone be careful. Meeting at 1 p.m. sharp." John Carter, ignoring their stares and whispers, focused on his work. Time flew by, and soon it was 1 p.m. John Carter waited in the work area for his team. 15 minutes later, an employee strolled in with lunch, casually greeting him, "Hey, why aren't you eating?" John Carter glared at the employee, "Didn't I say the meeting was at 1 p.m.? Where is everyone?" Hearing this, the employee suddenly realized John Carter had been waiting for everyone to arrive for the meeting instead of doing other work. He hurriedly called his colleagues, urging them to come to the meeting quickly. A moment later, everyone in the team gradually arrived, looking sluggish, some carrying lunch boxes, others holding coffee. They chattered amongst themselves, completely disregarding John Carter. Silence. John Carter's roar finally quieted everyone down. "I said the meeting was at 1 p.m. today, didn't I? Did you all forget?" "We didn't forget, but we thought the boss liked to be late, so we went to eat and have coffee before coming. We arrived just in time for you," one employee mocked, referencing John Carter's habit of being tardy. John Carter was furious and about to unleash a torrent of reprimands, but remembering his preparations that morning, he restrained himself. He couldn't let a small matter ruin the bigger picture. He bowed his head to everyone, "I know that my lateness this morning was a dereliction of duty. If this has caused any dissatisfaction, please speak up, and I will correct it." John Carter's bow stunned everyone. They stopped what they were doing and listened intently to him. "I know you all arrived earlier than me and contributed more than me. A newcomer like me naturally can't convince everyone immediately. But being the team leader is a responsibility entrusted to me by the general director, and I can't shirk it. I must do my best to fulfill it and live up to his trust. And all of this relies on everyone's help. Are you trying to threaten us by bringing up the general director?" a man said, his voice not loud, but just enough for everyone to hear. John Carter suddenly felt he couldn't hold back anymore. This group needed to be straightened out. Fortune favors the bold. John Carter lunged forward and punched the man who had just spoken, drawing blood from his mouth. "I don't know what you think of me. Maybe you think I'm just a freeloader. But let me tell you, even if I am a smooth talker, even if I got this position by relying on a woman, if you have any opinions, say it to my face. Talking behind my back isn't brave. If you truly despise me, then climb to a higher position than me and kick me down. Then, even if you call me a dog, I won't object. But now, if you dare gossip behind my back again, I won't be polite. I'm not easygoing, so be careful." John Carter's words finally had an effect. The people below stopped their chatter and silently watched him speak. "I've just drafted a new sales plan. Please take a look. If there are any issues, tell me early, and I will humbly revise it. The employees obediently took the drafts John Carter handed out and examined them. We've always followed the conventional sales route, relying on door-to-door sales calls. Now I've come up with a new approach. Everyone likes jewelry, so why don't we do something in this area? John Carter finished outlining his plan, looked at the employees below, and smiled. I roughly estimate that if you follow my sales method, sales will at least double. Before I arrived, the sales team leader told me that the most we could earn in this profession was about $5,000 or $6,000 a month, but if you implement my plan well, a monthly income of over $10,000 won't be a problem. Hearing John Carter's words, although everyone was a bit skeptical, they still held a glimmer of hope. Those who had objections remained silent because of John Carter's previous words, just quietly observing him. All right, meeting adjourned, everyone can go. The employees filed out, busy with John Carter's plan. John Carter sat at his desk, thinking about his upcoming achievements, and couldn't help but smile. Since John Carter proposed a new plan, although the employees all worked according to his method, there were no achievements. The previous rumors suppressed by violence and John Carter's words quietly resurfaced. Employees in the company gossiped about him again, this time with added ridicule. Do you know the new guy in our company? The guy who just arrived and became team leader? Yeah, I know him, what about him? He previously told the team about a plan, saying something about achieving a monthly salary of over $10,000. It's been half a month now, and there's still no sign of progress from his team. Humph, what kind of ability does a guy who relies on women to climb the ladder have? Will the sales plan he wrote even work? In a short period, rumors within the company flew everywhere. John Carter, seeing no sign of sales growth, felt anxious. He was also arbitrarily slandered by people in the company. Returning home, he collapsed onto the sofa. John Carter woke up in a hospital bed. Victoria Snow was slumped beside the bed, her long eyelashes fluttering slightly, as if she had just fallen asleep not long ago. What happened to me? John Carter asked, his voice hoarse as if sandpaper had rubbed against it. Hearing John Carter's words, Victoria Snow stirred slightly, waking from her sleep. She opened her drowsy eyes, looked at John Carter, and yawned softly. Seeing Victoria Snow's expression, John Carter's heart stirred. He moved his body, wanting Victoria Snow to lie down on the bed and rest. Don't move, the doctor said you have a high fever from overwork and need to rest well. Seeing John Carter move, Victoria Snow hurriedly held him still, preventing him from moving. John Carter looked at Victoria Snow in confusion, not knowing how he ended up here. I came home from work and saw your door open, so I came over to check. To see if a thief had broken in. Inside, I found you collapsed on the sofa, your lips pale with fever. I immediately called someone nearby to help take you to the hospital. Why don't you take care of yourself? Don't you know that your health is your most valuable asset? Even if you've been promoted, you don't need to work yourself to death. Hearing Victoria Snow's reproachful words, John Carter gave a wry smile. Victoria Snow didn't say anything more, turning to walk out of the hospital room. Rest first, I'll go buy you some food. John Carter held the food Victoria Snow brought, a surge of emotion welling up within him, his eyes slightly moist. Noticing his emotional instability, he lowered his head and ate heartily. Only the sound of John Carter eating echoed in the hospital room. A moment later, Victoria Snow seemed to remember something and slowly said, I heard people at the company say the sales plan you proposed wasn't effective. Is that why you're sick? John Carter didn't answer, just lowered his head and ate more intently, as if the bowl of rice in his hands had become especially delicious, leaving him no room to think about anything else. Seeing John Carter like this, Victoria Snow sighed and continued, actually, work is like that. If you stand in a higher position than others, you have to bear more pressure than others. John Carter's movements paused. He buried his head in the bowl again. The rice was long gone. He stirred his chopsticks around in the bowl for a while, discovering there really was nothing left to eat. Embarrassed, he put the bowl down and raised his head to seriously listen to what Victoria Snow was saying. I always thought you were a resilient person, certainly able to withstand these pressures. But I forgot you've just stepped into society, not yet understanding how insidious people in this world can be. When encountering problems, you can't always calmly analyze them before making a decision. I'm really tired, John Carter finally spoke, his voice still a little hoarse. Everyone is tired, but we can't back down, because you don't know how many people will be implicated because of your retreat. We can only support each other step by step and move forward. Chapter 28, The Thick-Skinned. The two conversed back and forth. Thanks to Victoria Snow's consolation, John Carter finally unloaded the resentment in his heart and immediately planned how to handle everything that night. That night, he had sweet dreams. The next morning, John Carter arrived at the company very early. When he arrived, only one of the two beautiful receptionists had arrived. Seeing John Carter so early, she couldn't believe her eyes, pinching herself to realize it was real. The beauty watched John Carter's figure disappear, smiling charmingly. It seemed that life at the company had more gossip, and she wouldn't be lonely anymore. John Carter sat in his office and carefully reviewed the sales plan he had previously laid out. He held a pen and made corrections for a long time. Only then did the other people in the company start to arrive. Seeing John Carter's figure sitting in the office, everyone showed expressions of disbelief, then gave knowing smiles. With puzzled looks, they entered their own offices, chatting with those beside them. They no longer concealed their ridicule towards John Carter. All kinds of gossip mixed together in the office air, reaching John Carter's ears. John Carter only felt the pen in his hand move faster and faster. Until the last stroke of the pen landed, John Carter put down the pen with satisfaction, picking up the plan in his hand. He laughed loudly. This time, there definitely won't be any problems. Let's see what they can say now. The sales team had all arrived, packing up their things in the office, preparing to go out and market the product. Don't go yet, everyone. John Carter called out to those preparing to leave. Team leader, what's up? A team member asked. Don't go out marketing today, everyone. I'm planning a meeting to discuss our current work performance and see if there are any issues. Although everyone inwardly resented John Carter, being their team leader, they held their tongues. Hearing his words, they put down their things and followed him into the meeting room. Once everyone was seated, a cryptic smile spread across John Carter's face, making them uneasy. They couldn't figure out what he was up to. After a period of silence, someone finally spoke up, Team leader, what's the purpose of this meeting? John Carter looked towards the speaker, Tina. She had previously expressed dissatisfaction with his promotion to team leader and seemed to hold a grudge. I've called you here for a reason, obviously. Why else would I gather you all? John Carter glanced around. Everyone looked listless, as if nothing could rouse their spirits. John Carter cleared his throat. I've called this meeting to get your feedback on my sales strategy. Is there anything wrong with it? Why is everyone's performance so low? I think this must be my fault, so please speak frankly so I can make corrections. Hearing John Carter's lack of reproach, the team members gradually opened up, voicing their concerns. I think this sales strategy isn't working for us, said Chris Walker, the only other man on the team besides John Carter. Every time we finally manage to market to someone, we lose the client for some inexplicable reason. Can you elaborate on those reasons? John Carter looked at Chris Walker, waiting for them to fall into his plan. Last time, a client criticized me for not smiling. So they didn't buy the product I was marketing, Laura Green grumbled, her lips curled in dissatisfaction. John Carter carefully assessed Laura Green. She wasn't unattractive, but her constant frown gave off a sickly impression. No wonder the client complained about her not smiling. That half-dead expression would discourage anyone from making a purchase. What about you, Christine Taylor? Do you have any issues? John Carter turned to a quiet member and asked. Team leader, I don't have any problems. You can ask someone else, Christine Taylor murmured. Glancing at the others, she lowered her head and said nothing more. I'll give you 5 minutes. If you have any problems, speak up quickly. At his words, the team members rushed to voice their concerns, a torrent of issues directed at John Carter. 5 minutes passed. John Carter slapped the table, signaling for silence. He was about to speak. I think our benefits are too poor, Tina Harmony added, still unsatisfied. Realizing the room had fallen silent, she gave an embarrassed laugh and retreated to her seat. As Tina Harmony sat down and the meeting room quieted again, John Carter's expression suddenly changed. I've heard your issues, and frankly, they stem from your lack of effort, not my plan. Team leader, how can you say that? A member muttered. John Carter's sharp gaze swept over him, silencing him as John Carter continued. I tested the methods myself when I gave you the plan. It absolutely can stimulate customer purchases. In the cases you investigated, the failures are largely due to our own shortcomings, poor service and lack of enthusiasm, turning customers off. As John Carter spoke, his eyes scanned the employees below, those caught in his gaze instinctively straightened, plastering on their most practiced smiles. John Carter paused, softening his tone. To boost your motivation, I've revised the sales plan and proposed a new reward system. Review it. Meeting adjourned. Without hesitation, John Carter strode out, leaving the members staring blankly at the new sales plan in their hands. Their expressions morphed from bewilderment to manic elation. Hastily gathering their things, they bolted from the room, sprinting out like unleashed hounds, eager to make sales. Their figures quickly vanished from John Carter's sight. John Carter watched his subordinates, energized, rush out, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He twirled his pen. This time, I refuse to fail. After the new plan's implementation, the team's performance skyrocketed. John Carter grinned at the soaring numbers on the performance chart. Charlotte Lane, learning of John Carter's team's success, felt vindicated in her choice, showering him with effusive praise. The company, astonished by the surge in performance, ceased their backbiting about John Carter. John Carter's life seemed to flow smoothly. John Carter finally lived up to his name, holding his head high with smug satisfaction. Idle one day, he decided to stroll around. Upon reaching the street, he noticed a crowd gathered in the distance, seemingly engrossed in some spectacle. Curiosity being a universal trait, John Carter, no exception, pushed his way into the throng, eager to discover the cause of the commotion. The crowd was dense, and John Carter struggled to penetrate it. He asked a young man beside him, "What's happening in there?" "Beats me. Just checking out. The hubbub. Been watching for a while, but can't see a damn thing." "Boring," the young man said, craning his neck for a better view, only to find his sight blocked by a wall of heads. He turned and walked away. John Carter quickly took the young man's vacated spot. His height gave him a slight advantage, allowing him a glimpse of the scene within. Through the jostling bodies, John Carter caught sight of a woman in a business suit, her breast straining against the fabric. She's got a figure to rival Victoria Snow, he thought, his gaze lingering. "What are you doing?" The girl's voice echoed from the crowd, striking a familiar chord within John Carter. He pondered for a moment. Was this Victoria Snow's voice? What on earth had happened to her? Realizing the girl in the crowd might be Victoria Snow, John Carter lost all interest in the commotion. "Excuse me, please. The person inside is my friend." John Carter tried to push through the throng, fearing it truly was Victoria Snow. He used both hands to part the crowd, shoving a few people aside who grumbled in response. "What do you think you're doing?" A woman barked angrily at John Carter. "How can you be so rude?" Sorry, John Carter apologized as he continued forward. Finally reaching the front, he stood still, gazing ahead. The woman's captivating hair, disheveled from the recent struggle, clung to her face. Tears shimmered in her eyes, threatening to spill over at any moment. Her full lips trembled with anger. This was undoubtedly Victoria Snow. A man clung to Victoria Snow, blocking her path, preventing her from taking another step. "Victoria, please forgive me, I truly love you." John Carter recognized the man as the persistent Richard Knight. First harassing Victoria Snow in her room, now accosting her on the street. The man's audacity was astounding. "Victoria, I know you've taken a liking to that white-faced fellow next door, and that's why you're ignoring me. But I still love you. Can't you come back to me?" Hearing Richard Knight's words, the onlookers cast scornful glances at Victoria Snow. One woman loudly proclaimed, "What kind of woman is this? Abandoning a good boyfriend for a foreigner." Sigh, the people these days. Chapter 29. Through thick and thin a sinister smile crept across Richard Knight's lips as he heard the crowd's reaction, ready to further embellish his story. "Even if you and that man have something going on, I'll still treat you well. Come back to me. I'll even kneel for you, all right?" He bent his knees, as if about to actually kneel. Witnessing Richard Knight's actions, the crowd's mocking tone intensified. "Look, the young man is about to kneel for you, girl. You should go back to him. He doesn't even mind what you've done." Another woman offered her unsolicited advice. Hearing Richard Knight's twisted words and the crowd's judgment, Victoria Snow trembled with rage like a willow in the wind. She raised her right hand, pointed at Richard Knight, her lips quivering before she finally managed to speak. "Richard Knight, you'll die a dog's death." Such a weak statement had no effect on someone as thick-skinned as Richard Knight. He merely glanced up at Victoria Snow before lowering his head again, continuing his pitiful charade. Seeing that her words were futile, Victoria Snow stamped her foot and angrily tried to leave, but the surrounding crowd blocked her escape. The stares and whispers were too much for someone as fragile as Victoria Snow to bear. Unable to escape, tears finally streamed down her face. When John Carter pushed through the crowd, this was the scene he witnessed. Victoria Snow was crying her eyes out. Richard Knight stood beside her, a pained expression on his face, yet the uncontrollable twitching of his lips betrayed the blossoming joy within him. "Don't cry anymore, we can talk things through." A tissue was offered from beside her. Victoria Snow looked up and saw John Carter standing there. "Why are you here?" Victoria Snow asked softly, her voice still trembling. "I was just walking around, saw a crowd gathered here, and came to see what was happening. I spotted you and came over." John Carter gently wiped away Victoria Snow's tears. "Come on, don't cry anymore, I'll take you away from here." With that, he pulled Victoria Snow away from the crowd. Seeing John Carter pulling Victoria Snow away, Richard Knight's already soft voice grew a little louder. "Victoria, do you really want to leave? You meet him and you want to leave immediately. Don't you have any lingering feelings for me? We used to be so good together, why have you changed?" The surrounding people finally understood that this young man who appeared was the legendary third party. They assessed John Carter. His appearance was merely pleasant, not at all the gigolo image they had imagined. Richard Knight sighed theatrically towards Victoria Snow, and the crowd blocked John Carter and Victoria Snow's path. A kind-hearted older woman looked at John Carter. "Young man, you're still young, don't do anything wrong." Looking at the well-meaning woman, John Carter gave a wry smile. "Madam, you've really misunderstood, we don't have that kind of relationship. Could you please let us through?" The woman continued to stare disapprovingly at John Carter and Victoria Snow, refusing to let them pass.